morning, Top fans. It's Bill from Top Fan Rivalry here again with my good friend Dave Schaefer. And we're going to do something a little different today than just the clubhouse. Dave has been willing to share some knowledge that he's gained over the last several years that I think will be great for the big segment. This segment for Top Fan is a segment that's going to be better, more of a public information or public service side of it. We're going to feature players that are making their way up into the bigs, and also parents that are, living that roller coaster as well. And so Dave has graciously decided to take some time with me this morning to discuss that. So good morning, Dave. How are you?
All great. How are you?
I'm excellent. I got Jackie Robinson behind me. What more do we need, right?
I got Cary, North Carolina behind me.
There you go. So we're set for the day. We could talk baseball all day long. I appreciate you being on and being our inaugural interview for our Before the Big segment. It's an exciting opportunity on Top Fan Rivalry. So I look forward to asking you a few questions and seeing what you can tell those that are on the site.
I'm ready. I'll do my best.
Okay, well, let's see what we can do here. Let's start with something basic. Do you have a kid that plays currently?
I do. My son is 15, almost 16. He's playing varsity here in Phoenix, varsity baseball right now. And he's playing for USA Prime National this summer. We're going to be traveling all over the middle and eastern United States.
Okay. So you'll be all over the place for the summertime.
Pretty much. And I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Take lots of pictures.
Yep.
Great. So what have you done in order to help your son succeed at what I assume is his dream to play in the major leagues?
Well, there's so many pieces to that question. I think, if you boil it down, we've had him involved in baseball since he was 5, maybe 6. We started club ball when he was 8. Tried to make it always about having fun, obviously getting better, but always about having fun. I helped out coaching till he was about 12, and then I excused myself. And I think that's important, but it's really all about the fun. The other thing I did was, whatever sport it was, he tried hockey, he tried basketball. He's a good athlete, but whenever he wanted to do something and he asked me to come out, you want to throw, you want to do this, you want to do that, I dropped whatever I was doing and I went out and helped.
Good dad. So that leads to the question, you kind of alluded to something, but when do you start making that transition and looking at ways to either get a personal trainer or some type of trainer or a throwing coach or a pitching coach? When do you look at that, and what are those types of costs? I mean, I assume that those range all over the place, but I guess let's take it in 2 parts. When do you start to do that, and what are the costs?
Well, I think, I've asked people that have played at a very high level the same question. I've asked them, so, is it important to ingrain those fundamentals young and get them right young? Or is it okay to kind of let them go and you can take care of it later? And every answer I've ever gotten was, you've got to get the fundamentals right young. So it doesn't matter if your kid's hitting 750 and just raking when he's 10 years old, but is the swing in the right spot? Are the fundamentals in the right spot? Maybe not strong enough to swing a big bat yet, but so to that end, he's had a guy that he's worked on with hitting since he was 9 or 10 years old. And, it might be once a month, maybe twice a month, nothing too rigorous. But just to get a different voice than dad, and somebody who actually knows what the fundamentals look like and can teach them the right way. Same with throwing. I've seen so many kids that, the throwing motion's out of whack, and it always bugs me when I see them again a year later and nobody has tried to fix it. So I think it's important to get the fundamentals done right and done young so that when they get older, they've got that foundation to work from.
Yeah, I can remember going to baseball camps as early as 6 years old, and
Yep,
you just start young, and I I think you might agree with this statement, but as a parent, you're first and foremost, your kid is your kid, and you always want them to be healthy. Any sport can harm a body. When they learn what you're saying in essence is when they learn their fundamentals, it could even save them from health issues later on down the road.
absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of discussion back and forth on whether you put your kid in a throwing program at what age. And to me, we had a throwing program in 12U, which is just really at the cusp of going onto the bigger fields, making longer throws, and your body growing and you getting stronger. And the whole purpose was not to get our kids to add 8 miles an hour to their fastball. The whole purpose was to teach them what bands are, what are plyo balls, how do you use them, what are some of the most common exercises, so that when they get to high school, when they get to their 13 and 14U teams and they're throwing harder, they know it's not the first time they've seen that stuff.
And it's so to that point though, I mean, I assume that you can spend any ratio of money on this type of
Of
thing,
course.
but how do you manage that type of cost? I mean, it these weren't cheap back when I was playing 100 years ago. Um, I can't imagine they're cheap now.
No, they're not. And it's important to just talk to the other parents, talk to coaches you trust, get recommendations of the folks that people trust, that know what they're doing. Um, you know, I've been fortunate here in Phoenix because we've got so many former minor league and major league players here that um, you can find them. They're here, and find them, the ones that are good teachers. We've had one here since forever, and we were spending $50 an hour to hit. And to me, an hour of hitting, you can go to a batting cage and sit there and feed your son, and a batting cage just rental will cost a good chunk of money. So to do that with somebody that knows what they're doing, to me, is a bargain. Um, Plus, again, it's the other voice. It's somebody that's got credibility in your son's ear. The throwing programs, they're probably a little more than that. I want to say we brought in a guy that was about 50 or $60 a player, but he would do the whole team at once for the throwing program and put the bands up on the backstop and do the plyo balls and stuff. And then the throwing program that we're using right now, which has MLB clientele, is about the same. It's about $50 a session. But again, once the kids learn those exercises and learn what the routine's like, they can be on autopilot for a while until maybe they've run out of exercises and they need a little more guidance. But right now, Derek's on autopilot. He knows his exercises and can run through them.
That's right. So in essence, managing costs, the best way to do it is start early, learn the routines that are best for
Yeah,
that individual's body, right? And then, like you
yeah,
say, you can go on autopilot. You understand, I need to run this type of distance. This is the way that I stretch my arm, those
yep,
type of things.
yep. Absolutely, absolutely. That's all good stuff.
There was recently this week in Major League Baseball, there was a very well-known athlete who just signed a very large contract who has a swing that is a little out of control and probably not the best or most common swing throughout their shoulder, and is now landed themselves on the injured reserve list and will be out for at least 10 days, but maybe longer. And that could be a lasting injury. The first thing I thought when I saw this individual go down was, this isn't the way you teach people how to swing. And I think you know what I'm referring to.
Right,
And
right.
so, um, but managing costs can also managing doing these things early can manage costs later on down the road, is what you're saying.
I think so. I think so. And I think too that, there's a tendency as kids get older, to think, well, I can save a little money. I'll just get a membership at LA Fitness or at the Y, and we can do it on our own. And you need that guidance. You need to have the workout plan set up for the sport you're playing. And most kids need accountability. They need somebody watching over them and making sure they're doing it and doing it right. And I had a coach tell me a few years ago, if you're just going to get a membership at the local gym, just don't bother because it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. Once they're older, maybe in high school and all those routines are set, that can possibly be a good supplement, but not the start. You got to set the foundation right.
Well, and even in high school too, they have places where they can work out. They've got gyms at school and things like that.
And trainers and supervision and folks, instructing you on how to do the exercises right.
Yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point for the parents that are watching this is if you start young and make small investments, it's going to save you in the long run on a lot bigger investments.
Well, and I think then too, every kid's different, but once you get to 14U, you get to high school, you kind of see how your athlete has grown and what their body type's going to be and what their love of the game is going to be. Then maybe you step to another level, or you back off. Is your kid going to be a rec player, just play high school for fun, probably not play after high school, or do they want to take a run at this? And then
Yeah,
you're at a different level of training and everything else.
yeah, absolutely. Which brings me to the point you just mentioned, high school, which brings me to another question that I have for you is what do you find the roles of school ball versus maybe a club or travel team? Nowadays when I was playing, and I'm sure when you were playing, travel ball was kind of a glorified babysitting thing for our folks. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a huge thing. Nowadays, club ball and travel ball are a very, very big thing. So how do you distinguish the two, and what have you seen as far as I'm sure you've seen this with Derek's teams where they've played other folks that may not have had as much experience. I mean, help me understand this.
There's a lot of facets to that one too. I guess number one is, to me, club ball is a club team that plays locally, may travel to adjoining states. Travel ball is where you pretty much don't play locally and you travel anywhere and everywhere. Um, that to me is the distinction. We played club ball all the way through 13U. Maybe travel to an adjacent state for a tournament once in a while, but we're not hung up on, I've got to go to a certain venue in Hoover or Atlanta or whatever. At those ages, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of money to be saved there by just, and again, in Phoenix and SoCal and a lot of these states, everybody comes to you. You don't need to go to them. There's really good baseball that comes to you. Now, if you're in a less populated state, maybe you need to travel a little bit more. But I think there's a lot of folks that think that travel is the solution, and it's not. I think there's a lot of money to be saved there. And I got sucked into the same vortex when he was younger of, if I'm not playing every 2 weeks, something's wrong. We need to be playing. I know we need to play. We need to play. And then you look back on it, it's like, no, we didn't need to play that much.
So um, do you find that school ball, um, do you find that when you're playing other teams that maybe have not played any type of travel or can you distinguish the difference in the players that have played in other environments just besides for school ball and little league or pony or whatever it might
Well,
be?
not only can you tell which ones have played at a high level outside of school and which ones haven't, you can tell which ones are playing for lesser club teams who aren't playing more of a challenging schedule and playing with and against great players. That's the one thing that I learned early on is you have to be with and against good players. I personally think if your son is the best kid on the team, that you need to find a new team.
Okay.
You need to be a middle of the pack kid at the best. Keep pushing, the fact that, there's another kid over here that's better than you at this, and maybe you need to just work a little harder at this or that. Not at 8U, but when you get into the little older ages, when they're starting into the big boy baseball, um, that was probably the one thing that helped us the most, is getting on a high end team in 13U and showing not only my son but other kids, this is what big boy baseball looks like, and this is what you need to do to compete. And then they self-select. They either love it and want more of it, or they'll want rec ball, which is perfectly fine.
So and I love how you made a statement a few minutes ago about there are, for you parents that are out there that are just getting your kids involved, um, you don't have to be playing every 2 weeks. You don't have to be guilted into be playing every week, right? Um, I mean, do you find that if you could have done it differently, would have you changed that a little bit, or?
I probably would have toned things down in the fall. And again, this is Phoenix,
Mhm.
so consider the weather. But I would have toned things down in the fall and winter. One thing we did, which is losing popularity, is we played Little League.
Yeah, yeah,
And I wouldn't change that for the world either. That was a fantastic experience. Um, Playing with your community, your buddies, your neighbors. There needs to be more of that. And it's a shame that Little League is not keeping up with the times and isn't as popular. But that was a fantastic experience. The downside of that was we were playing club ball and Little League at the same time. So it was a lot of baseball.
a lot of baseball, a lot of baseball. Okay, so we're going to switch gears here, and these last three questions, I guess these last two questions, these next two questions are going to be kind of fun. The last one is going to be some thought provoking, and I appreciate what you've counseled us on so far. So here's a tough question: when do you fire your dad as the coach?
Well, it's not only fire your dad, it's fire the other dads too. Um,
Okay.
and I think there's always an exception to the rule. And I know a couple of dads that played at a high level that are good teachers, that are fantastic coaches. I know a lot more of them that should be in the stands. And you know, I love the game. I was able to teach these kids something up until they were about 10 or 11, and then they passed my level of competence. And it's important to just be a realist and have that self realization that, you know what, I, I can be involved chalking the lines and getting the field ready and scoring. I don't have to be pretending I know what I'm doing as a coach. And again, I keep talking about voices, but the kids need different voices. They, it might be the same message said a different way, and that's what they need. If one guy says it one way, one guy says it another way, but it's pretty much the same message. That's what they need. And the dads need to get out of the way at that point. I think if you're on a team at 13 and 14U with dads coaching, you really need to examine, are they the right coach? Or should you find a better coach? Really, at the end of the day, when you're talking about club ball and travel ball, what are you buying? What are you spending your money on? You're spending your money, to me, on coaching. I mean, sure, you're paying the entry fee to play a baseball tournament and you're paying for umpires and whatever, but bottom line is you're buying a coach. So are you going to buy a dad who, got cut from his high school team and is, pretending he knows what he's doing? Or are you going to get a coach that is a paid coach that played AAA and is great with kids and actually knows how to construct a swing? And he, by the way, he's got a couple of buddies that'll come out and help and teach pitching and catching, which is
That's
how we've basically done things.
I love that comment. And for those of you watching it, please understand, I think that last comment was you're paying for your coaching. I think that that's phenomenal, because isn't that what ultimately, Dave, you're right. That's what you're doing. You're paying for that specific thing to get your kid a little further along. I love that.
Yep, and there's great examples. You know, there was an example of a tournament last year where my son was pitching and he was off, his mechanics were off. And I know enough to know I don't like what I see, but I don't know enough to fix it. And I'm dad, so my voice is poison. But what I got from the coach was he's overthrowing. I got 2 words. Convinced me at that moment that I had the wrong coach.
Really?
So, yeah. And at this level, and when my son wants to take a run at this, and he's going to play at a high level, he needs better coaching.
So so dads out there, know when you're don't be too prideful. Know when your back is up against the wall, and feel free to back out. It's okay. There comes a
Yep,
time in every
absolutely.
dad's life when they realize that they can't do the math, that homework that comes home, and there's sometimes in a dad's life where they got to realize that they just can't coach it. But now, Dave, with your son Derek, you can still coach them in a different way, in the sense of maybe you can challenge them. Hey, you're doing this on this day. I challenge you not to give up this many walks, or do
Yep,
that. You could still do something like that, right?
which we do, and mostly what we do is mental, and just try to get his brain ready for the challenges that are coming. And he's pretty good at doing that himself now too. But just we talk about quality at bats. We talk about giving up the body on defense. We talk about range because these kids are in geometry. They understand angles. They're being taught angles. So how do you apply that to your sport? They tell me you're never going to use this stuff, and I say, oh yes, you will, because if you're a shortstop, there's an angle there that they need to play, and they need to understand how I can expand that angle.
Mm,
And then there's pitching. I mean, you control the game by throwing strikes and hitting your spots and challenging hitters and hit pitching to contact. And we talk about that kind of stuff. It's more high level, and I don't ever get into them with your hands are too high, your arm slots here, or I don't even touch that.
know your limits.
Yep.
Okay, so then here's the question then. How do you, as a dad of a son that wants to play at a higher level, how do you still keep it fun?
Well, and to me, that's where school ball comes in at this point. You know, there are some high school teams, obviously, that are very, very competitive. Um, but and some games that, even our high school team, who's somewhat competitive, really competitive games. But at that point, you're with your buddies. You get to trash talk at school a little bit. Um, to me, that's fun. The other part is, it kind of goes back to getting yourself off the field. It's always got to be about the fun. You've got to find the reasons to just make it fun. I know whenever he got selected to an all-star team, we'd make a big deal about it. I know when like he switched club ball teams, I always made it feel like, what, you're special. You got selected. It's not that dad just wrote a check. Um, Anything you can do to just inspire confidence and keep that love of the game going. And again, anytime your kid wants to play, drop what you're doing and get out there and play.
Love that. That is an excellent comment by an excellent father on that. Okay, my last question for you, and this is one that you've quasi answered already, but let's see where we go with this. Um, as a parent, what has been your biggest challenge as you've watched your son grow up in this sport, and or what do you see your biggest challenges going forward?
Well, I think the challenge to me has been finding the right balance of pushing versus letting him find his way. Um, if I see that, you haven't been in the cage for 3 weeks, or like right now, it's like, all right, when are you going to go work out? You haven't worked out in 2 weeks. Just the right balance of push versus pull back. And as they get older, that changes. That's a challenge. Another challenge is to always thinking the grass is greener on other teams, and it's usually not.
Mhm.
Um, chasing rings, chasing, wanting to post on Facebook or Twitter that your 9U team won a tournament this weekend. It's fun, and everybody wants to be on that team and get that attention. But the big picture is, your kids with his buddies, they're having fun. You got a good coach. Why would you make a change? You know, that's a challenge as well. Obviously it changes with age. The younger kids need, a less push. Maybe the older kids need more of a push. Um, you know, I, I, I think I've got the balance down pretty good, but there are times when I probably push a little too much. And it's again, it's kind of like when you realize you shouldn't be coaching, you have to be able to look inwardly and say, you know what, I just need to back off and let him figure it out.
It's just hard for a dad to do, right?
It is. And there's times when I'm right and he's wrong and he won't admit that. But, um, you know,
Uh,
again, it's different voices too. It's the different voices. If you believe that you should be hitting 3 times a week, and as dad, he doesn't want to hear it from you, then you find other people that have credibility that say, Derek, you need to be in the cage 3 times a week.
yeah, 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 and that's I as listening to you, I think a lot of the men that are on this site and that are going to watch this are going to look and say, well, how do you do that? How do you manage that? Because innately, as men, we want to be right all the time and have to be able to back off just a tad. That's a
hmm
difficult thing.
It is,
And
and it changes with age. A 10-year-old's different than a 13, than a 15, and a 17. But
yeah,
one of the things I told my son, in 13, 14, he was like, you know what? If you want to be a rec player, if you want to just play high school ball, have fun with your buddies, get a part-time job, whatever, that's fine. I have no problem with that. If you want to take a run at this, it's a different equation. And this is what it takes. And I'll support you 100%, but it's a different equation. And you're going to have to put in all of the work to get there to give yourself that shot.
I love it. I love it. Dave, this has been a fantastic uh, first interview, and if you don't mind, I might actually have you back on this segment another time, as I hear back from other parents and what they think. We have a coach that's going to be coming on to talk a little bit about similar to what you're talking about. But if you don't mind, I'd like to do this again sometime.
Yeah, happy to do it and happy to share. There are times where I would like to have another kids so I could use everything I've learned. But unfortunately, I don't. And I usually cure myself of that thought pretty quickly. But, you know,
Or your wife does.
yeah,
There you go.
yeah. But it's a fun run and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well, top fans, I have to tell you, I feel an honor to have Dave as a friend. I feel an honor that he took his time out with me this morning. By all means, after this video is up, feel free to make comments down below. Um, Dave checks this too. I'll send it to him once he's done. Feel free to make comments about it. This segment of Before the Bigs, we're going to do a lot on. In fact, his son Derek and I will be doing a one-on-one interview here shortly that will be also posted. Derek's had quite a bit of success in his young high school career. And Dave, as a sophomore, what was his first line as a pitcher when he came out? What was his first line? You remember?
Well, of course I remember. I think it was 5 innings pitched, 2 walks, 11 strikeouts.
11 strikeouts.
Seven, 78 pitches, 55 strikes, if I remember right.
See, that's that you're going to hear a lot from Derek in the future, and I just love that. And top fans, I hope you understand that the genesis of what we're trying to get accomplished is we want you parents to be able to bounce ideas off of each other. And some of you folks may be going through what Dave's already experienced, and it might be some value to you to be able to hear it from another voice. So we appreciate the time that you watched this video. Dave, again, thank you so much for your efforts. And I thank you for being willing to be on. And please feel free to make comments. We'll look forward to what you have to say. To the next segment.